In the last episode on the Bronze Age history of Aleppo, I mentioned and showed you a relatively famous statue of a king named Idrimi. What I didn't do, though, was tell you the story behind the individual that this monument depicts. Discovered in the 1930s by Leonard Woolley, yes, the same Leonard Woolley who excavated the royal tombs of Ur, it's an almost life-size statue of a man named Idrimi. But that's not all. The statue also has a rather lengthy inscription detailing the remarkable adventures of this particular individual, which is what we're going to learn about in this video. After its capture and destruction by the Hittite king, Mushili I, in 1595 BC, the city of Aleppo was rebuilt and once again became the capital of an independent kingdom. We know very little about this period in the city's history, except for the fact that it was ruled by an Amorite dynasty that included kings named Sara'el, Aba'el, and Ilim-Ilima. Of these, the latter is the most important and seems to have expanded the kingdom's territory and influence into neighboring regions, including Mukish. However, after Ilim-Ilima's death, the kingdom centered around Aleppo seems to have all but disintegrated. It's here that this remarkable statue of Idrimi, son of Ilim-Ilima, fills the gaps of what happened to both Aleppo and the surrounding areas. Covering the front of the statue is a 104-line Akkadian language inscription that tells the story of Idrimi. It starts off with him and his family fleeing Aleppo for the city of Imar. In Aleppo, my ancestral home, a hostile incident occurred so that we had to flee to the people of Imar, my mother's relatives, and stay there. My older brothers also stayed with me, but none of them had the plans I had. So I, Idrimi, the son of Ilim-Ilima, thinking to myself, whoever seeks his patrimony is a great nobleman, but whoever remains among the citizens of Imar is a vassal. I took my horse, chariot, and wife, and went away. Deciding that the life of an exile in Imar wasn't for him, Idrimi ventured further to the west, eventually ending up at a town called Amiyah in Canaan. It was there that he met other exiles from Aleppo and some of the territories that his father had once ruled over. The town of Amiyah is located in Canaan. People from Aleppo, Mukish, Ni'i, and Nuhashi were living in Amiyah, and when they realized that I was their lord's son, they gathered to me. I said the following: I have become chief. I have been appointed. Then I stayed among the Hapiru warriors for 7 years. Utterly restless, Idrimi tells us that he spent the next few years practicing different forms of divination, one involving the releasing of birds, and the other form being the reading of entrails of animals, all to see if the gods would aid him in his quest to take back his ancestral home of Aleppo. Finally, in the 7th year of his exile, he got the signs from the gods that he needed. In the 7th year, Teshub became favorably inclined toward me, so I made ships and had auxiliary troops board them and proceeded via the sea to Mukish. I reached the land at Mount Cassius and went ashore. Now, when my country heard of me, they brought me large cattle and small cattle, and in one day, in unison, became reconciled to me. When my allies heard, they came to me, and when they concluded a treaty with me, I established them truly as my allies. Eventually, Idrimi and his followers took over several cities, including Alalakh, which had historically been part of Ilim-Ilima's kingdom of Aleppo and its predecessor, the kingdom of Yamhad. Omens and other signs from the gods notwithstanding, why after 7 years did some people from his father's kingdom all of a sudden unify behind Idrimi? It may have been due to the new political reality in northern Mesopotamia and the Levant, specifically the rise of the Hurrian kingdom of the Mitani. Whatever had caused the breakup of Ilim Ilima's kingdom over 7 years ago, the Mitani king, Paratarna, had taken advantage of the situation and annexed Aleppo into his kingdom. It's reasonable to assume that it would have only been a matter of time before Paratarna, or perhaps the Hittite king to the north, would come for Alalakh and the surrounding areas. Idrimi must have known that he and his allies stood little chance of defeating the Mitani and regaining Aleppo, so he decided to make amends and submit to Paratarna as his vassal. The inscription on the statue tells us, "Now for 7 years, Paratarna, the mighty king, the king of the Hurrian warriors, was hostile to me. In the 7th year, I sent Anwanda to Paratarna, the mighty king, the king of the Hurrian warriors, and told him of the treaties of my ancestors when they were allied with him, and that our actions were pleasing to the kings of the Hurrian warriors, for they had made a binding agreement between them. The mighty king heard of the treaties of our predecessors and the agreement made between them, and with the treaty they read to him its words in detail. So on account of our treaty terms, he received my tribute, and I swore to him a binding oath as a loyal vassal." As a vassal of Paratarna, Idrimi demonstrated his value to the Mitani by attacking and conquering 7 towns along the southeastern periphery of the resurgent Hittite kingdom. He tells us, "Then I took troops and attacked Hatti land. As for the 7 cities under their protection, these I destroyed. Hatti land did not assemble and did not march against me, so I did what I wanted. I took captives from them and took their property, valuables, and possessions, and distributed them to my troops, kinsmen, and friends. Together with them, I took treasure." The incursion into Hittite territory brought Idrimi closer to the borders of Kizuwadna. Perhaps sensing that his kingdom was next, its ruler, King Pilia, signed a treaty with Idrimi under the authority of Paratarna, making Kizuwadna a tributary of the Mitani state. A copy of the treaty with Pilia's seal on it has been found amongst the ruins of an old fortress in Alalakh. This particular tablet is basically an extradition treaty that marks the cessation of hostilities between Kizuwadna and Alalakh, and the agreement of both sides to return fugitives and displaced peoples to their respective parties. Part of the text reads, "Should Idrimi seize fugitives belonging to Pilia, he shall send them back to Pilia. And should Pilia seize fugitives belonging to Idrimi, he shall send them back to Idrimi. Whoever transgresses the words of this tablet, may Teshub, Shemigi, Ishara, and all the gods destroy him." Idrimi seems to have ended his life in peace, under the protection of the Mitani state, with the final sections of text on his statue cursing anyone who should deface his monument, but also blessing his scribe and those who will read his remarkable story in the future. Sharua is the official scribe. He has written, copied, and reviewed the text. And now, may the gods of heaven and earth keep Sharua, the scribe, who has written the text of this statue for him, in good health. May they protect him and be his guardian. May Shamash, Lord of the upper and nether worlds, Lord of the spirits, be his protector. I reigned for 30 years. I inscribed my achievements upon my statue. Let the people read it and continually bless me. I suppose we've just done that by listening to Idrimi's story and keeping his memory alive. As always, thanks so much for stopping by. I sincerely appreciate it. I'd also really like to thank Grandkick69, Yap de Graaf, Pasta Frola, Michael Lewis, Daniel Allen, Danny Van Eck, Wenix TV, Robert Morgan, Frank, Tim Lane, Sebastian Hurtado Correa, Franz Robbins, Brendan Redman, Faridun Dadachanji, Jimmy Daruwala, Sher Kam, Farhad Kama, and all of the channel's patrons on Patreon for helping to support this and all future content. Check out the benefits to being a Patreon member, and if you'd like to join, feel free to click the link in the video description. You can also follow History with Sai on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as continue to listen to special audio programs on the History with Sai podcast. Thanks again, and stay safe.